Warning: listening to this podcast may incidentally make you hate running less to the point where you actually may start to love it. Listener discretion is advised. Welcome to the Omega Sports Learn to Run podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Matt Meinerd, pronounced My Nerd, and I'm honored to be here guiding you through today. If you are new, welcome. Here's how it works. You vote on the topic, and then I blab about it for 20, 30, sometimes 40 minutes. If you're a regular, welcome back. I cannot thank you enough for the support and the positive feedback and the growth. We are now downloaded in 71 countries. If you're looking for visuals of this episode, where I post this episode, but I try to include visual examples to enhance the learning experience, check out my YouTube, Learn to Run. What are we talking about today? What was the winner? We're going to talk about PMS. You heard me, PMS. Not that kind of PMS, although maybe someday I'll have a guest on that's more of an expertise in that area. But PMS is an acronym that I made for new runners, beginning a running program. So today, the main theme is a systematic approach for beginners, how to get started, actionable steps to take to start you on your running journey. Or maybe you're new-ish to running. You ran in high school, you're trying to get back, or you just want to start from scratch. You're tired of getting injured. This episode is for you. So PMS is an acronym for programming, mechanics, and shoes. These three things, actually in order of importance: programming, mechanics, and shoes. So I'm going to go through these each one by one, the acronym. We're going to talk about what it means and how it applies to you. I'm going to have at the end of this three things that you can actually either download or take with you that will include a training plan that is 5 weeks just to kind of get you started, an actionable item for mechanics, and then for shoes, I made a shoe intake where, just like if you were going to the doctor's office and you have all these questions, you're not sure what to ask, and you get there, you forget. I have a questionnaire that you could fill out, just like you're at the doctor's, that you can then give to the doctor. They know more about you. You can give to the shoe specialist at the local running store, and they can help to set you up with the right shoes. So PMS, that's what we're going to go into today. So, but first, as always, what's some foundational information that we need to know? I'm going to start off with broad spectrum, and then we're going to narrow this down. So what we're going to talk about is adaptation. Adaptation, to adapt to something. So if you look up the dictionary definition, the broad term is this: a change or the process of change by which an organism or species becomes better suited to its environment. Super broad, right? But the key there is that it becomes better suited. So let's zoom in a little bit closer, make this more applicable. More specifically, let's talk about tissue adaptation. Tissue meaning cells like your muscles, your tendons, your ligaments, your bones. That's what we mean when we say tissue. So tissue adaptation. What does that mean? Let's go through some examples. Think about when it comes to muscles, episode 1 of season 2, Muscle Love 101. We talked about how when we strength train, we do actually make small little injuries in the muscle fibers, then they recover and they adapt. So strength training is a form of tissue adaptation to the muscles where they will recover and they become better suited to the task or the environment. What about skin? What's an adaptation that can happen to the skin? Well, think about a blister and think about what a blister is caused by: friction. So most commonly, I looked this up, big toe is the most common place where we get blisters. What is it from? Friction, rubbing. It's instead of this perpendicular force, it's more horizontal or tangential or parallel, where we're getting this friction. What adaptation that your body will do to help better prevent you from happening that in the future is a blister can be turned into a callus. A callus is where your tissue, your skin is actually thicker and more firm to prevent that. And side note, real quick, that's really what this all boils down to. I'm trying to help you get into a running program by forming a callus to your legs versus a blister. And what's the difference? Adaptation, time, recovery, dosage, not too much too soon, allowing your body, your skin, all your tissues to adapt to the stresses of running slowly enough over time that you don't get injured. It's not a blister and just goes right into that callus formation. What about an adaptation for bones? So, osteoporosis. As we age, our body adapts to its demands as always, but we are more of a predisposition to lose bone density in our bones. And so osteoporosis is a disease where we're losing the strength of the bones. So fractures are more prevalent. So one of the common clinical applications of this is they'll prescribe people strength training or weight bearing exercises to put stress through the bones, not enough and not too quickly that's causing a fracture, but with time, the bones will adapt to be better suited and will have stronger bones. What about tendons? I love this story. This is a classic. Dr. Albertson was, and just a quick side note, tendons are just where muscles insert into bones. That becomes this tendinous structure. So your Achilles tendon is made up of your calf muscle. So back in the day, orthopedic surgeon named Dr. Alfredson, he had Achilles pain. He goes to his partner, he says, "Hey, Dr. Joe," I don't know what his name was, "will you do surgery on my Achilles?" He's like, "No. One, there's nothing to do surgery on. It's not torn. And two, I'm going to have to see all of your patients, all your caseload. My life's going to be miserable. So no." So Dr. Alfred's like, "Fine, I'll show him. I'm going to rupture this thing." So lo and behold, he goes to the edge of a step. He's just dropping his heel down, lengthening quickly, stressing the Achilles tendon. And like most things in life, we learn from accidents. What happened? Well, with time, his pain went away. His Achilles started to feel better. And so years of this, to realizing all this applies, that it's called, the fancy term is called mechanotransduction. Having a mechanical stimulus can initiate healing on a molecular level. So by him putting stress through that Achilles, it became more resilient. It adapted and it became stronger. So all these are to be said, these are all adaptations that can occur with our body. And what I'm going to use for this, of all these different examples and analogies, the one I want to go back to is what I talked about in season 1, episode 4 about shin splints. Shin splints is really just a bruise to your bone, medial tibial stress syndrome. And I made an analogy of how shin splints is like a sunburn. You're going out in the sun, your skin, if you get too much UV light, too much sun too quickly, you can get a burn to your skin. It's like an injury. And so with our running example, force, physical stress, the sun is like the impact that we get with running. Every time your foot hits the ground, whether you're walking or running, that force comes right back up at you. That's like our sun exposure. So we're going to talk throughout this of trying to stay under that injury threshold, trying to adapt, and we're going to try to not get burned or not get injured. Sun, impact, skin, bone. So hopefully that'll make more sense as we go to get our body adapted. So imagine this. Let's go back to that example of the sun. Let's say you haven't been out in the sun. You're a vampire. Nothing against vampires if you're listening. Let's say you haven't been out in the sun in 10 years. You used to be in the sun a lot in high school. You did cross country. You were out all the time, but it's been a long time. And so your body adapts. You haven't been out in the sun for a while. So if we just say, "Hey, let's go outside and be in the hot, hot sun for 10 minutes, 20 minutes, what's going to happen?" Well, most likely you're going to get burned. Your skin hasn't been exposed to that. So same with this, with running, if you haven't ran in a long time, we have to get your body used to handling the forces, the stresses of running. So what are some ways we can do this? We can manipulate a couple factors. We can manipulate the dosage, the frequency, how often are we going out in the sun, how much of the sun are we getting at one time, and also the intensity of the sun. So back to the running example. One way that we can get your body used to impact is starting with 10 minutes. This is going to be an example. I'm going to go over a 5-week example that I'll send you at the end, or you can download. And it's going to be 5 weeks. Over the course of 5 weeks, how do we get your body used to handling the stresses of running or like the sun exposure without getting burned? So one way we can do this is by taking the time, the amount of time that I'm running, and we can start to increase it slowly over time. Not only that, but of that 10 minutes, that dosage, we can also start to fluctuate how much time in that 10 minutes are we actually getting of running. Example, let's say that you're out in the sun, that's like running. You go under an umbrella, that's shade, that's like walking, less sun exposure. So we could say go out in the sun for 30 seconds and then go under the umbrella for 90 seconds. So you're getting a 1-to-3 ratio of sun to shade or running to walking. So that's going to reduce our chances of getting burned or getting injured. So week 1, day 1, you set your watch, your intervals to 30 seconds and 90 seconds. 30 seconds you run, 90 seconds you walk. And we call that 1 round. And with time, we can start to manipulate how many rounds, but our dosage for that particular week will stay the same. So in this example, week 1, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, how can we set it up that each time you're getting a little bit more? Monday is 8 rounds. Wednesday is 9 rounds. And Friday is 10 rounds of this 1-to-3 ratio, 30 seconds of running, 90 seconds of walking. And so with this, the $1 million question is, how do we know it's okay to add rounds or to add the amount of time of running versus walking? I want you to ask yourself this throughout this whole process is, can you differentiate between discomfort and destruction? Discomfort and destruction. We know running is hard. It's not easy. It doesn't feel good, but that's how we challenge ourselves. That's how we grow. But we have to ask ourselves while we're doing this, is what we're feeling actually uncomfortable, or is it actually truly hurting us? Because if we stop every time it's uncomfortable, we're never going to get anywhere. But we also don't want to keep going if it's going to injure us. So I'll talk about a model of using a traffic light system of throughout this, what gives us permission to advance or progress? When should we stay the same? And when should we actually regress? So here's what I like to use as an example. There's other methods, but this is what I'm going to talk to you guys about. Green, yellow, red. If you get a green light, then you progress to the next day, which is more rounds, or each week it's more running. Yellow is perceive the caution. Let's repeat. Let's repeat that same exact day, and then we'll make a judgment. Versus red is no go. We take a step back, take a day off, and we slowly get back to it. So what constitutes these colors? The pain scale, and yes, it's very subjective. It's very different from me versus you. But what we're really looking for is patterns. Patterns. Is it your pain increasing? Is it decreasing? Is it staying the same? So with this, I like as a general rule 5 out of 10, no go. If you're having 5 out of 10 pain, that is a red light in this example, being conservative. So then that leaves yellow and green. Yellow is 3 to 4. 3 to 4 out of 10 discomfort, not awful, but we can work with that. That's proceed with caution. We want to explore that a little bit further. Versus 1 to 2, yeah, that's normal. That's green light all day. And so the pattern to know is what you did for this running the next day when you wake up or immediately after running. That's when we really start to evaluate and assess. If you assess during the process of running, you'll stop every time. That's just instincts. Your body wants you to stop. It hurts. It's uncomfortable. It thinks you're in danger. You're not. So try to avoid making any judgments about progressions or regressions in the moment. So afterwards, next day, example, I go out, I do this 1 to 3 ratio, 30 on, 90 walking. I do 8 rounds. Immediately afterwards, I'm out of breath because I haven't ran maybe ever in a long time, but it doesn't hurt. This isn't like destruction. I'm just uncomfortable. And then what should happen is as the time goes on, 15, 30 hour, that starts to improve. We start to see this decreasing of this discomfort. Now, a time where maybe it was too much is when you're done, you feel uncomfortable for an hour, 2 hours. That night, the next morning, you wake up. And if we're experiencing 5 or above, that's where we're regressing. We're either taking a day off on that Wednesday and we're skipping and going to that Friday, or we're going to go back on an interval that we've progressed. So after is when we assess. 5, red, no go. Yellow, proceed with caution, repeat, and green. So the key with that is assessing after, not in the moment. Okay, so how about frequency? So in a perfect world with this program, 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. If you're someone that needs daily, we know with neuroscience, habit formation, being more frequent can help to create these feedback loops or these patterns and programs, and it becomes easier to do it every day. I still would only recommend this Monday, Wednesday, Friday. But on Tuesdays and Thursdays, we can start to do some walking, just some light walking. But so for our frequency, 3 times a week. And the final piece, we talked about dosage, we talked about frequency. How about our intensity? How hard you're working? This is what we're going to keep pretty consistent. Ideally, you're not going out as hard as you can. We need to let your body slowly, your lungs and your heart to slowly start to come to the game. So this is where if you are someone that's been running for a long time, what I use for intensity is 3 gears, gear 1, gear 2, and gear 3, where gear 1 is an effort where you could hold a conversation. Gear 2 is where you get a couple words out between breaths. Gear 1 is you can maybe say 1 word at all. I don't like using that for brand new running because in the beginning, there's going to be a huge disconnect between what's going to limit you, your lungs. You may find you can't hold a conversation at any pace just because your body's getting used to it. So instead of using that, the talk test, for brand new for running, this is what I like to use. I like to use rushing. Are you in a rush? If you're going to go from here to there, if you've got an event and you have an important event, 3 different efforts. Effort 1, you're chilling. No rush. You've got time to spare. You're not in a huge hurry, so you're not going to be really, really stressing yourself. 2, we can still call it gear 2, is you're barely on time. There's no time to lollygag. You got to go. So you're going to have a little bit higher of an effort level. 3 is that you're running late to a very important meeting. You can't be late. You're behind the clock. You need to hurry. So with this, we're trying to keep this intensity level of that one of we're not rushing, but we've got a little bit of time to spare. That's how hard the effort that we're going to work through these 5 weeks. We can start to reassess as each 5 weeks or each month starts to go on, but that's the intensity. So in this example, and I'll talk a little bit through it, but it's easier just to see how this works. We talked about Monday, Wednesday, Friday is these intervals. We talked about Monday is 8 rounds, Wednesday is 9 rounds, and Friday is 10 rounds. Each week, though, we start to fluctuate. We start getting you a little longer out in the sun, a little less shade time, a little more running, a little less walking. And so our 1-to-3 ratio of week 1 turns into a 1-to-2 ratio. So only 2 times as much recovery or walking as running versus 3. And now we're doing 30 seconds. We're still doing the same amount of sun exposure, but we're doing less time in the shade. So only 60 seconds of walking instead of 90. So we're giving you a little bit higher of a dosage. That's week 2, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 8 rounds, 9 rounds, 10 rounds. You're assessing immediately after the next day, the next morning, how do you feel to get permission to green to keep going? And then what about week 3? Now we're at a 1-to-1 ratio, 60 seconds of running and 60 seconds of walking. Same amount of recovery time, same amount of shade, but now we're increasing to 60 seconds of sun exposure or running. 8 rounds, Wednesday is 9 rounds, 10. And so what you can see is next week, each time we're starting to fluctuate. Now we're going to go into week 4 is we're actually getting less walking time than running. It's 60 seconds of running and only 30 seconds of walking. So now it's a 2-to-1 ratio. Week 5, 3-to-1 ratio, 90 seconds of running, only 30 seconds of walking. 8 rounds, 9 rounds, 10 rounds. If you follow this for 5 weeks, you'll see by giving you small little doses of time, divvying up how much sun exposure, we can then allow adaptation to take place. So this is the programming, the first P. Let's go on to the M for mechanics. This is extremely important concept. And I've said it before, you can have perfectly efficient mechanics. You can be smooth. All the energy you're creating, you're expending is going towards paying on the principal, moving forward, low interest rates. You're not bounding, you're not breaking, yada, yada, yada. You can have extremely perfect, efficient mechanics and still get injured. You can still have too much too soon. So that's why, as far as the hierarchy of programming is more important than mechanics. I'm all about mechanics, you know that, but you can have efficient mechanics and still do too much too soon and get injured. So then you ask, well, why are mechanics important? Oh, it kills me inside. But we got to play the devil's advocate. Why are mechanics important then? Well, it depends. You can have someone that does not want to work on their movement strategy. They don't care at all about that stuff. They just want to go. They don't have this history of getting injured. They're not getting injured. I'm not in charge of anybody. Then no, they don't have to work on their mechanics. But improving your mechanics helps to give you a buffer for injury. So just like the sun example, put a little layer of sunscreen on can help make up for maybe too much time spent out in the sun by working on your mechanics. And working on your mechanics can also, where most of us like this, is working on your mechanics gets you faster. Talked before, paying on the principal is moving forward. Cost, money is expensive. We spend it. And energy is expensive. We're exuding, we're burning. Well, with running the principle, the goal is moving forward. So anything that is happening, whether my muscles are working in a different direction, up, side to side, twisting, if it's not going towards paying on that principle, it's wasted energy. It's paying on the interest. So by learning how to have more efficient mechanics, we can pay on the principle of moving forward, get faster, less impact, lower that injury of not getting burned, not getting injured. So Matt, what are the mechanics? What are efficient mechanics? Well, this is what I spent better part of 2.5 years of just dissecting this one question over and over and over again, leaning it out. What's the least amount that we can get away with? And these are the 3 things. Arm swing. Arms are assisting the legs forward and back, not up and down. Talk about a handsaw versus an axe. Leaning forward, hinging at the ankles, the ankle, to slow yourself down or braking the least amount possible. And the final component of efficient mechanics is gliding, moving purely horizontal, not vertical. That's the push with the tush, pushing the ground backwards to move horizontal and forward instead of pushing straight down through the ground and going up. So what makes up efficient mechanics? Arm swing, hankle, meaning hinging at the ankle, and gliding. Opposite is bounding. We don't want bounding. So now if you said, Matt, now of those three, what is the most important? If I had to, and what I'm going to suggest that you can work on, think about it. If the arms aren't assisting the legs have to work a little bit harder. Doesn't necessarily increase your risk of injury. Efficiency, yes, but injury risk of more stress, more load, not as much. Leaning, I could make an argument by braking or overstriding, the amount of force that you're getting, how quickly you're getting it is very high. This can cause injury risk primarily to your knees, but even more so is the gliding. If we're not gliding, if we're not moving horizontal, what goes up must come down. The higher I go in the air, the more force the impact. That's where we can start amplifying and really getting a tremendous amount of stress. I like to think about or talk about the example of don't do on a treadmill. It's easier to think about when it's a fixed speed. If you're running 6 miles per hour on a treadmill, don't do 7.5 miles per hour of work. Try to match the demand. Try to only do enough work to keep up 7 miles per hour. So same with this. If you go out and run a mile with bounding, going up and down, you may actually be doing 1.5 miles worth of work, which is more sun exposure. It gives you a higher chance of getting to that injury point and getting burned. So if I had to pick, gliding is the most important. What are ways you can work on this? There's a lot of different ways, but one that I'm going to recommend is the tennis ball necklace. You probably heard it before. If not, hear me out. I take a tennis ball, fill it with metal washers or BBs or some coins just to get a little auditory feedback and get a little more weight to it. Connect it to a shoelace around the neck and measure it to the point where it's at your belly button. And then this is our bound detector. We're going to learn how to conform our mechanics the way that we move forward to get the least amount of up and down as possible. And so how this works is you put it on, and then as you run, you're trying to conform your mechanics to make the ball sound as quiet as possible, not hit you. And how this always works is you put it on, you go, whoa, that's loud. And you slowly, it's amazing to watch and to see people figure it out. They slowly start to not bring their arms up and down, more forward and back. They don't bring their feet too high off the ground because that's jumping. And slowly they start to figure it out of how to move horizontal so the ball stays as still as possible. It is going to move, but if you're moving up and down significant enough, it's going to hit you. What goes up must come down. That's your feedback. That's your cue of conform your mechanics to glide if the ball is hitting you. So if you go to Learn to Run, L2R, TBN, tennis ball necklace, L, the number 2R, TBN.com. I show you how to make your own tennis ball necklace, and there's a free little mini course where I have a visual experience, an auditory experience where I'm with you in your ear, where I teach you how to use that tennis ball necklace. So L2RTBN.com. The final one, hot topic, shoes. Ooh, shoes. What are we possibly going to recommend or talk about when it comes to shoes? So I want to talk about cushion, all about the cushion. What is the cushion? The bottom of the shoe. If you look at the bottom of the shoe, how much can that deform? How squishy is it, or how hard is it? Why would cushion be important? Well, think about this. Go over some examples to kind of get the answer. Would you rather stand on cement for 1 hour versus standing on a padded floor? Would you rather sit on a rock? It's flat, but a rock, super hard for an hour, or sit on the sofa? Would you rather punch a punching bag with your bare knuckle, your bare fist, or a cushioned, padded boxing glove? Cushion equals protection. Sun, impact. Sunscreen, that's our protection. The bottom of your shoe can act as a form of protection. So if a shoe is really hard and firm and heavy and stiff, it's not going to be as forgiving. It's not going to protect you as much. So we want to find a shoe that has a good amount of cushion to it. And then you ask, well, Matt, if that's the case, why wouldn't everybody just want cushion? Well, like everything, too much of something cannot be good. But in this example, the reason why is there is an inverse relationship of protection versus performance. Higher protection, typically less performance. So if we're asking the shoe to absorb this impact, if we want that shoe to take some of the force, the stresses of running when we hit the ground, that's going to prevent some of that stress force from coming to our leg. But when we're trying to run faster, we're trying to every action equal an opposite reaction. If we're trying to gain some speed, if the shoe is taking away some of the impact, it's taking away some of the impact. So it's going to affect your performance. The shoe can absorb. Think about if you were to run on a basketball court versus a trampoline. It's hard to pick up a lot of speed, right? Because you're pushing down and back and it's moving with you. It's hard to get a lot of speed from that. So my recommendation is this is start with the most amount of protection or cushion as possible in the beginning. With time, see what's the least amount of protection you can get away with. And some people are like, I don't care. That's why I ask, are you interested in a PR, personal record, or personal best, or you just not want to get injured? If someone's like, I don't care about the time, I just don't want to get injured, they almost always can just stick with cushion and be happy with it. But then with people with time, progress becomes addicting. They want to be able to find the edge. That's where you can start to see, can you get away with less protection so we can have higher performance? So all this to be said, that's the number one thing that I am concerned about. But what about all the other brands and styles and all this other stuff? So this is why I created a shoe intake. Imagine this, you go to the doctor, you have all these questions in your head, you get there, you forget what you were going to ask, you leave, like, oh man, I forgot to say this, this, and this. Well, a way that we can try to prevent that is having you fill something out beforehand, bring it in and say, hey, these are the important items. So I made this a couple years ago and I have 10 questions, 10 items, and I'm going to go through them quickly. But the whole point is that you can then bring this to your local running shoe store and say, here's me, here's what I got. What shoes, what brands fits you in your budget, your price point, your style, because they're constantly changing and they know better than anyone else what's out in the market. So of this shoe intake, you can, again, I'll have a link to this. You can also go to L2R, L number 2R, shoeintake.com. And it's going to come up with this little Google form, 10 questions. I'm going to go through each question and the reason why we're asking this. Question number 1, what is your running experience? Less than a month, between 1 and 6 months, or greater than 6 months? This goes back to protection, cushion. Someone that's brand new, I want them to have more protection. Next is, what are you training for? A 5K, a half or a full marathon, or a mud run? That's going to make a difference. Do we want these shoes to be durable and hold up for a long period of time? Or do we want a shoe that's going to give you some more grip? So knowing the distance, the dosage can also help in picking out the right shoe for you. What surface are you primarily training on? Treadmill, cement, or trail? So there's two sides of the coin, the bottom of the shoe, but also what's the surface that it's hitting. So we can fluctuate based off of what you're landing on. So sometimes for me personally, I have a different shoe when I run on a treadmill versus outside. On a treadmill, it's more forgiving, more cushion. There's shock absorption in the treadmills. So I can get away with a lighter, less cushioned shoe. But outside, when the pandemic first hit, transitioning from mainly treadmill running to outdoors, I was getting signs of shin splints overuse. So I had to get more of a cushioned shoe. So by letting them know what surface that you're running on can also help them to know trail running, a little more ankle support to prevent you from rolling. So again, surface is important. Here it is. You care most about what? Not getting injured, performance, or fashion. I had to put that on there. So far, nobody's put that in the responses, but it's on there. If it's important to you, it's important to me, as long as you're not getting injured. Next question, number 5, is injury history. Knee, shin, calf, Achilles, or foot pain, or none, knock on wood. Why do I ask these? What's the differences? If it's a knee or a shin issue, I'm typically thinking it's a protection. They need more cushion, they need more protection. If it's a calf or Achilles issue, I'm thinking more of the stack height, where you've probably heard of zero drop shoes, or if you take a shoe and you look at the bottom all the way across, if it's the same height the whole time, that's a zero drop, versus most shoes have a built-in heel rise to it. Well, sometimes people going to a zero drop too quickly or switching shoes that has a big difference in the heel drop, the heel sits lower, more stress and strain through that Achilles, more stress through the calf. So sometimes if you have a history of Achilles or calf pain, it may be a zero drop issue where you need some more heel to it. How about foot pain? Why is this important? If I have someone that has pain on the top of their foot or even the toes, usually it's a fit issue. Think about a box. If you're shipping a box, length, width, height. If you're trying to shove your foot, let's say you're shipping something in an 8-inch wide box and you've got a 9-inch wide, whatever you're shipping, it's not going to fit. It's going to squish it. And we need some actual movement. The foot has to have some ability to splay and contract and move. And if you're cramming your foot into a shoe that doesn't fit, that's where it gets a problem. So we all talk about the length of it, but the width is also important. They will know what to do there. Simple trick I've used in the past is taking that sole of the shoe out, putting it on the ground, stepping on it, not sitting, stepping all your body weight, and then tracing around that sole and seeing, do your feet fall within the confines of that sole of the shoe? If it's spilling out, hanging out over the sides, the shoe's too narrow. We've got to get a little bit wider. Next question. My shoe's side of the story. Where is it breaking down or wearing? The feet and the shoes can tell us a story. If we're getting wearing on the outside back corner, I know it's probably a posture, probably overstriding or breaking. They're probably not leaning. They're vertical and upright, so their feet are staying out in front of them the whole time. They're making contact with the outside corner of their shoe. They're wearing it down. Versus if it's wearing out towards the ball of the foot, all these can tell us a story and tell us an answer. So taking the time to look at it, maybe if you don't bring your shoes in, just filling this out and saying where they wear can give the shoe expert some idea. Next is the shoe's DOB, date of birth, an estimate. Knowing how long you've had the shoes, and this is also a huge point of contention, but the research that is out there, and I went to a course years ago. Brian Heiderscheit is an amazing physical therapist, and a lot of what I've learned over the years was with him. He actually talked about and did a study where they're trying to answer that question: how many miles can we put on a shoe before it starts to break down? The problem with some of that research was it simulated what one step would be with this machine, and it ran it for hours and hours at a time. Normally, you put your shoes on, you run, you take them off. That time to recover and adapt is huge. It's so important. Think about your pillow. You put your head on the pillow. Over time, if you just keep pushing it down, don't allow it to recover, it doesn't do its properties of actually supporting and cushioning your head. So there's no right answer for this, but they typically know through their experiences of how old a shoe is, how many miles on a shoe, to give an idea of it. Current shoe satisfaction: happy, neutral, meh, or not applicable. So just get an idea of, sometimes people come in, they talk about a shoe and you think they're talking negative, but they're like, oh, no, I love it. I want to keep the same one. Let's just be clear and direct. Desire to purchase: yes, please, open to discussion, or no thanks. This helps to set the tone, the precedence. Maybe you just want to learn. Knowing this up front is super helpful to remove some friction from the situation. And the last one is, I bought my last pair of shoes where? Local running store, corporate, store like Dick's, Amazon, or don't remember. This can help them to know of, maybe, have you had some guidance? Did you get it from a warehouse where maybe the quality is not as good? This is just good information to know for them. The final thing I'll say on all this is, when you go there, this has served me well with a lot of things in life, picking a new pillow, new shoes, is this what we call ABA, kinesthetic awareness training, where pretty much, let's say your shoes you have on now are shoes, that's A. You're trying to pick out a new pair of shoes, that's B. And so how we know is you go there, you have shoe A on, and you walk, you jump, you do something systematic, squat, and then you put shoe B on, or what we're comparing to, and then you do all those same exact things. It's so hard to pick up on those differences unless you go back to A. Put the shoes A back on. Oh, wow, I didn't realize how little cushion that I had or how much it wore down until I put these back on. Or you could put one shoe on of each and just compare. Feel it out. So ABA, always comparing back and forth. That's like at the eye doctor, 1 or 2. Okay, 1. It's really important when it comes to investing in your only equipment that you really need besides clothes, unless you're a nudist colony, your shoes. We need to invest in those. So that is the shoe intake. Key takeaways: new running systematic approach, PMS, programming, mechanics, and shoes. And the importance is in that order, my opinion. So 3 giveaways. So 3 things. If you go to the show notes, we'll have a link to, or my Instagram, reach out. I'm going to find ways to get out to you. I'll give you this 5-week example where I have Monday, Wednesday, Friday, the ratios, how many rounds, the pain guide, running versus walking. I'll give that to you. Also, again, that L2RTBN.com is that tennis ball necklace experience. And then the third thing for the giveaway is the shoe intake form that you can download digitally, print it out, bring it to your shoe store. Also, if you want to take even more of the guesswork out, I have available the Learn to Run system online, where I took this example of brand new runner. What's a way that I could get them running 20 minutes continuously, nonstop, without getting injured? So the Learn to Run system is available online where it feels like I'm there with you. It's composed of 3 different levels. Level 1 is mechanics, 7 days, 7 skills. You're learning the 7 efficient components of efficient running. And then level 2 is 3 weeks long. That's tissue adaptation. That's where we're really just trying to do what we talked about, building a base, getting your body used to and handling the stresses associated with running. And then once we get to level 3, that's where we're going to start working on your VO2 max, your oxygen consumption, your heart and lung, your ability to take air and oxygen in, disperse it throughout your body. And so each level, each day, each week is making progress. Before you know it, by the end, 20 minutes total in continuous you're running. So if you message me anywhere, I don't care where you message me, it could be email, DM. If you message me adapt or adaptation, I'll give you $100 off for listening to the show for that Learn to Run system. Also, again, learntoruntbn.com is where you can get that tennis ball necklace experience. So I would like to thank my sponsors of the show, Omega Sports. They have been getting people in the best possible shoes, getting them the right equipment, feeling like family for over 40 years. If you live in the Charlotte, or there's 6 or 7 different stores around across the Carolinas, if you are near an Omega Sports, bring this intake form to them. They'll have it available and they'll be able to hook you up. And I know they'll take good care of you. Of note, the views and opinions of the show do not reflect those of Omega Sports. For better or for worse, they are my own. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you want to vote on the topics, you can follow me on Instagram at learn.to.run or email me at info@learntorun101.com, and those are numbers. So appreciate it if you could rate, review, and share this podcast with your friends. The Omega Sports Learn to Run podcast is available on all major platforms. Until next time, bye.